Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Blue Blood TV. I'm Art Chansky at Tyler's Tap Room in Durham for another edition. And we have a special guest with us today, who I think is still the most popular Tar Heel in the state of North Carolina, Phil Ford, former All-American, All-ACC Player of the Year, NBA Rookie of the Year, NBA All-Star. Phil, welcome to Blue Blood TV.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here. Thank you.
Phil, I know you've got a lot of things going on in your life, a lot of projects, but we want to jump right in and talk about something that's very important with Christmas coming up, and that's the new children's book that you just put out called The Kid Who Couldn't Dunk. And you are the kid who couldn't dunk, right?
Well, thank you, Art. It's a story of my early years growing up in Rocky Mount. I've been very fortunate to have great coaches all of my life. Junior high, high school, and I think I played for the greatest coach to ever coach in college, and Coach Smith, who emphasized fundamentals very strongly. We were very strongly advised to develop our fundamentals, and we wanted good athletes, but he emphasized to us that you didn't have to be a great athlete to be a great basketball player. And growing up, I thought that this book would be a motivational tool for some youngsters growing up. I think when I actually tell people that I've never dunked a basketball, most of them are in disbelief, but I've never dunked a basketball. But there are other things you can do to be a great basketball player, to be a very good basketball player. And hopefully that this book will motivate a lot of young kids to continue to try as hard as they can. And you don't have to be the greatest athlete. You don't have to be the most you don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the prettiest or whatever it takes. You think this day growing up, I think a lot of kids think you have to be the best and the most athletic at everything, but you don't have to be successful. And I think The Kid Who Couldn't Dunk illustrates that to a lot of young kids. And I just think it'll be a great motivational tool to a lot of kids growing up today in this society.
Well, it's available on all the e-platforms, Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, anywhere ebooks are sold. And it's a great Christmas present because it's one that the parents and the kids can share. It's a story about Phil Ford, probably the greatest basketball player in the history of North Carolina, who couldn't dunk, found ways to do other things better than other kids, and that was really your whole motivation.
And that's what the book illustrates. There's a story of my early years growing up on the playgrounds of Rocky Mount, but there are also little boxes there that I give some advice about being a better basketball player, about being a better person, about believing in yourself, trying as hard as you can, that everybody wasn't born with certain abilities, but everybody was born with some ability. So to learn to use what you have been born with to the best that you can. And I just think it's a great book for young kids growing up today in a society that kind of pushes the most athletic, the prettiest, the smartest. And I just think that there's a place in basketball today for the fundamental child growing up. You don't have to be the greatest athlete to be a successful basketball player. You can learn to do other things and do those things well.
Well, it's funny, there's such an emphasis now on shooting the three-pointer and dunking the basketball. But the free throw percentages have gone down and the turnover percentages have gone up. So that tells me that people aren't doing what you did, and that's learning how to take care of the basketball, dribbling high on pavement, dribbling low on a dirt court, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Learning how to guard your man and then coming up. Tell us about the one move that you could develop, because you saw it on TV, the NBA did it, was the 360. Tell us the story about how you developed it.
And I go into this in the book. When I was growing up, there was a game called Horse. And that's where you have to duplicate the shot that the person does in front of you. Well, growing up on the playgrounds of Rocky Mountain, the baskets were 10 feet, but they were tall enough that I couldn't dunk, and the guys in front of me would actually dunk and get me out. So I came up with this idea. I saw it on television. A guy was going into the basket for a layup and actually turned all the way around 60 and laid it in. So I went to the park and I just kept working on that. So I kind of told the bigger guys if they dunked, I was going to do a 360. So we negated each other.
Well, we're with Phil Ford at Tyler's Tap Room in Durham. This is another segment of Blue Blood TV, and it's brought to you in part by Pilsner. And we're happy to have Phil with us. And Phil, I know you're still a big Carolina fan. You're always at the games, and Is it harder to watch the game as a fan than it was to play in it?
Oh, much harder. It's much harder to watch. I'm a nervous wreck when I'm watching us play. Football, basketball, baseball. I'm just a huge Carolina fan, and but I think I'm a fair fan. You know, I don't pull against other teams. I actually pull for our team, and you know, I was just very happy that we had a good win last night over Duke University, who's I think Coach Cutcliffe and his staff has done a tremendous job with that program, and you know, Coach Fedora has somehow kept confidence in our guys. You know, to go out and win that game in a hostile environment like that after the adversity we've had early in the year shows the type of coach he is. So it was a very good win for us, and I was very proud of the guys last night.
That was, I mean, that was a statement game through what you've been through on and off the field, and you can come back, put on those chrome helmets. Come on with those chrome helmets.
I like them. They're pretty cool.
The same helmets that we wore when Gio returned that punt against
NC
State a couple years ago.
All right.
So they warmed up with the regular helmets, and they came out to play the game with the chrome helmets. I knew it was over when they came out. No, but it was a great crowd, and Carolina made a statement. And if you can struggle through the season like you've had with a lot of young players, some of that comes from the scholarship limitations we've had, but still use young players, have them mature, and then finish the season against Duke and State. And if you can win both those games, you still had a heck of a year and go to a bowl game.
I mean, and I was just talking to you earlier, I didn't realize how young we actually are. I didn't realize we had that many kids coming back offensively and defensively. And that just bodes well for us in the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah. We only have years who make an impact on the field this year. And like 9 or 10 starters coming back on offense, or 8 or 9 And I think that the future is very bright for Carolina football.
I hope so. I'm pulling for them.
Okay. So, Phil, tell us a little bit more about some of the things you do. I know the Phil Ford Foundation and philfordbasketball.com is very close and dear to your heart. And tell us about the foundation and what you do for that on a daily basis.
Well, I have a foundation that fights childhood obesity that I've started a couple of years ago. And hopefully that's a national epidemic. I didn't realize how national it was involved in the obesity of our nation's children in our nation. But that's something that's dear to me that I work constantly on, trying to raise money to help the North Carolina Children's Hospital in Chapel Hill. Excuse me. And I have a company, Phil Ford Basketball, that I actually give individual lessons to younger kids growing up about the things that we're talking about in the book, that I can be reached at philfordbasketball.com, that I'm really enjoying. I really enjoy working with the smaller kids to help them develop those fundamentals that we're talking about. And you don't have to be the greatest athlete to be a good basketball player. So, excuse me, I'm enjoying that. I'm working with the Naismith Park Legacy Group. We're building a park dedicated to Dr. James Naismith right outside of Raleigh in Knightdale, and I'm working on some TV projects. So you can call me a jack of all trades, master of none. All right, I'm really excited.
Entrepreneur. And then you also, I mean, you give clinics to teams and groups.
I do.
And you make speaking engagements.
I do. I give motivational talks about things that I've been through in my life to civic groups, to corporations, to younger kids. I do talk to different, sometimes I go up and work with a college, I'll cook 2 or 3 days at a time on the basketball court with their team. So I think I'm more busy now than when I was actually coaching, but I'm really enjoying myself. And I had a great time writing the book with you, and Mark did an excellent job with the illustrations, Mark Dabowski, in the book. So it's been a great couple of years. I'm really enjoying myself.
Yeah, the sketches even look like you a little bit.
They do. It's interesting. You know, I just asked for a picture of my dad and a picture of me. And actually, my sister, when she first saw the book, when she looked at it, my dad passed in '91. My sister told me that she started crying because the picture looked so much like my dad. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, it's called The Kid Who Couldn't Dunk. And it's really a motivational story about if you can't do something as well as some other kids, find something that you can do better than others.
Exactly, and do it well.
Yeah, and that's been the story of Phil Ford's life, because we all remember him as an All-American at Carolina, and the enthusiasm that you brought to the game has made you still a legendary figure in North Carolina and in college basketball. And we're just happy to have you still in the area and doing all the great things that you do.
Well, thank you. This is a great area. I think it's a hotbed for college basketball. It's been that way, I guess, since the 50s. I guess when Coach Case first brought basketball in this area, and it's just been fun to follow the ACC through all these years. And the ACC just seems to keep getting better and better. And basketball this year, I mean, with the teams that are in our conference this year, boy, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, give us a quick assessment of the Tar Heels so far this year. They've got a lot of new players, lots of depth, almost 3 deep at every position, but a lot of young kids too.
You know, and that's what's scary as a coach when you have those young kids. You know, with kids that you've had in your program for 2 or 3 years, you kind of know what you're going to get in any situation, night in and night out. But with young kids, that's just something that you never know. It's something that in coaching we like to use called game slippage. You just never know how much game slippage you're going to have with young kids. But these young kids are extremely talented. Yeah. You know, and you look at the kids that we have, the kids that Duke has, the kids that NC State have. They're very talented, and the landscape of college basketball isn't old anymore. Like when I played, Art, you remember I was a freshman and I was playing against David Thompson as a senior. Now in college basketball, that senior's gone.
He's never
so they aren't playing against that type senior, but they are playing against more experienced seniors. But they're still young players.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talent, and it's a very fluid situation because you never know if they're going or staying, except if it's Kentucky, because you know they're going.
There's a reason they're going too.
Exactly.
They're good, man.
Yeah, and you know, I want to single out a couple of players. Obviously, Marcus Page is probably the best guard in the country, and I like the way he's now using him at both point guard and 2 guard. Some of his and then Justin Jackson, who was an outstanding right off the bat, how he knows how to play the game of basketball.
Well, it's interesting. Justin, I think, plays a lot older than he is. Every time I've seen him play, I've just been impressed with how cool and calm he is. I actually was at the first exhibition game, and Coach Williams started him the first exhibition game after only a couple of weeks of practice. And to me, that just shows the type of player that he is. Offensively, most young guys can handle that, but to me, with Coach Williams, I think he had to impress Coach Williams defensively, and that's what's harder to pick up as a young kid because you have to learn the rotations, you have to learn to guard kids that are kind of just as good as you are, and you don't do that a lot in high school. You have to remember to box out. You have to remember that in North Carolina, you know, we run those scrambles. We have different things that we do, and you have to pick them up on the run. So I was impressed with him defensively. Now, don't get me wrong, offensively, he's fantastic too. But for him to be that mature and that far along defensively was extremely impressive. And it just shows the talent that Marcus has to be able to go from one guard to another guard. We haven't had many guys in North Carolina that could play the point and the 2.
Right.
You know, you think about it, you know, Coach Smith never looked at me to move over. You know, but, you know, John Kuester could. But, yeah, you know, he was a great guard. But when you start looking at the talent and ability that Marcus has, he's just a tremendous player, a tremendous student, an outstanding guy. Boy, I'm glad he's a Tar Heel. I enjoy watching him play.
And you know, the other thing too, Phil, is when you're in high school, you think you're playing hard. You think you really.
That's a great point.
You think you're playing as fast as you can, as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a culture shock when you get to college, and the coaches tell you you're not playing as hard as you can play.
And also too, when you get here, just a talent. I remember my first time playing pickup with Walter Davis. I remember calling home, telling my dad, "This guy is faster than I am, just as quick as I am, and he's 6 inches taller than me." So, and like you said, kids have to pick up on playing hard every play.
Right.
See, that's something you can't take off in college basketball. And in high school, sometimes you can take a play off here, take a play off there, just because you're just that much better than the kids you're playing against. But in college, that guy that you're playing against is probably just as good as you are.
And the culture shock that comes with moving from high school to college basketball. Coach Smith always used to say, a lot of freshmen don't get it because there's too much to pick up. But after they learn what it's like with the season of college basketball, the biggest leap they can make is from their freshman to their sophomore year.
Exactly, because you've had a year under your belt to see what it's about. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to succeed, that sophomore year is probably when you're going to succeed. And if you aren't going to succeed, that sophomore year is probably when you aren't going to succeed.
Well, I'm seeing that in Isaiah Hicks. I think he's made tremendous improvement. He looks like a player. I watched him play in high school. He was a tremendous talent in high school. And he was a little lost last year. But this year it looks like he gets it, and he's going to be one of those 8 or 9 in that rotation that's going to come off the bench and allow Coach Williams to play 94 feet defense a lot more than he has in the last few years.
And I've always said that I think in North Carolina you have to have a certain feel for the game, offensively and defensively, because a lot of our plays offensively aren't called by the point guard holding up a number, or it's called by which way he turns or which way he cuts or who he passes to, and you have to pick that up. Defensively, are we going to be in a scramble off the dribble? Are we going to be in a scramble off the pass? Are you going to cross the lane and cut someone off? Are we going to double team the screen at the point of the ball? We aren't going to double team the screen at the point of the ball. So, basketball is such a game that you can't think about it. It's got to come to you naturally. And sometimes it takes some guys a little longer to pick that up than it does other people. And that's what I was saying earlier about Justin Jackson. It's just amazing how fast that he's picked up the things that we do.
One good thing about basketball is you mentioned it. You can watch basketball on so many levels. Like, I know people who love basketball but don't know much more about basketball other than the fact that if we get more points than they get at the end of the game, we win the game.
I've had guys tell me they don't like looking at the game because of that.
Yeah, but then there are people who, like you and coaches who have coached and played who live in prison and see all the things that go on. So it's a fascinating game, and it's one that has become legendary in the state of North Carolina. Now, going on 50 or 60 years. And we've got a program at Carolina that's sustained itself for years. Duke now is going into 30 years of being experts themselves, and they've got some great young players like Jahlil Okafor and Tyus Jones.
Yeah, and they're great. I've watched them play, and they're young players, but they have things in there too to help those young players. And I always think that's really good. When you have a good young player, if you can have a guy who's a little older, that's probably at that same position, that's been through the wars before, that can talk to the younger kid, I think that helps tremendously.
Well, I really like what Coach K has done with Quinn Cook, because when Tyus Jones came in, everybody thought that, Quinn was going to lose his starting position, but Coach has moved into 2 guard. And it seems like he's more relaxed, under less pressure, and he's played great early in the season. So he's the experienced guy that can really help the freshmen on the court.
Well, and for freshmen to come in to play major college basketball, I always think that that's probably one of the toughest things to do in college sports, is for a young point guard to come in and play early, just because of the things I talked about earlier. And when you're at the helm and have to call those offenses and call those defenses and handle the basketball in very tight situations at the end of the basketball game, for a coach to have that much confidence in you, that says a lot about you as a player and as a person.
Well, between him and Okafor and Justice Winslow, I mean, they've got great freshmen. Carolina has great freshmen. State has good freshmen and really good transfers. So they're going to be very formidable this year. And then who knows? I mean, the Big East is now in the ACC, so you're always going to get something from.
Well, I guess
from Syracuse, right?
First, second, and guaranteed in this league anymore.
Not anymore at all. We're with Phil Ford at Tyler's Tap Room in Durham on another episode of Blue Blood TV. This one is sponsored in part by Pilsner and BlueBloodRivalry.com. And Phil, it's been a real pleasure to have you with us and talk about your book, The Kid Who Couldn't Dunk, because you are the kid who couldn't dunk, but you went on to do so many other great things in basketball. This is your story.
Yeah, and it is. It was great. I had a great time writing with you, Art. And as I said, Mark did an excellent job of illustrating the book, and it tells about me growing up and not being the most athletic guy in the world, but I had the greatest college coach in the world, and I was able to have some success as a basketball player, but I could never dunk the basketball.
Well, it's inspirational too in other ways. Parents can get it on any iPlatform, ebook platform, on Amazon and iTunes, on Google Play, and they can read it with their children and explain to them that, it doesn't even have to apply to sports. If you're not the smartest kid in math in school, you can become one of the smartest kids in history or another subject. So that's really the message in this book, is find what you're good at, practice at it, and become as absolutely as good as you can be.
And do the best that you can possibly do. I know Coach Smith used to always tell us, if you can look in the mirror and say that you tried as hard as you possibly can, then you'll win.
Well, thank you for being with us. This is Art Chansky from Tyler's Tap Room in Durham, another episode of Blue Blood TV. And I want to give my best and heartfelt thanks to the kid who couldn't dump.
Thank you, Art.